It's missing the O. There's a lot of Irish, I think they're Irish plates. Irish plates around here. I've seen a lot of Irish plates today. I think when there's 3 letters followed by 4, I think it's 4 numbers or 3 numbers. I think that's Irish, isn't it? I don't know. Is it? I'll look it up when I get back. I think it is. But yeah, I've noticed quite a few today. It's one of those, once you notice one, they're everywhere, aren't they? Yeah, kind of struggling a bit today. I shouldn't talk about this because I'm sure it gives some great pleasure to get sick and twisted pleasure out of hurting people, and slow down because I'm conscious about my breathing. I don't want to come across as some kind of pervert, heavy breathing at you all. That would be just one of many things that they to fit into the narrative that they've created for me, wouldn't it? Listen to our heavy breathing. Fucking perv. Oh, that's nice. It's nice. It's really misty today. Misty and mysterious. But yeah, I've been getting blasted. Blasted is what we all refer to it as for the last couple of weeks, just constantly in the head, you know, heat directed to the same point in my head, and it switches sometimes though. They'll direct it towards my nose, and I can only describe it as feeling like sunburn, like throbbing sunburn. Sometimes when I manage to use something to deflect the pain from my head, and they'll change it up a little bit and direct it towards my nose. Yeah, like sunburn. Feels like you're just got constant sunburn, throbbing all the time. Or I tell you what it feels like for me. And when I didn't have a very good relationship with my mum. She had a lot of love for my brother, but she didn't seem to have any for me. And she hid it quite well, you know. It wasn't so that other people would have noticed. These types of people with certain personality disorders, they manage to hide it. They manage to hide it quite well. But obviously, when you're a child and you're experiencing that, or not experiencing any love, you can tell, you feel it, you know. I always I adored my dad. I really did. It was only later on in life, as I started kind of getting a bit older, that, you know, me and him we didn't even have a great fallout. He just stopped speaking to me. It was I suppose he was the lesser of two evils, really. You know, he was quite emotionally abusive as well. He would carry out silent treatment on you for months as a kid. I remember the experience, and I think the whole summer holidays, so about 6 weeks of him not speaking to me. It was awkward as shit, you know. His car would arrive, and my mum would say, you know, you better go to your room now, is your dad coming? You know, because he wasn't speaking to me and he didn't want to see me either. But it was a weird kind of situation, because he would never explain to you what it was that you'd done. He would never, you know, you didn't know what it was you were in trouble for, and it would never ever be rectified either. He would just all of a sudden start speaking to me again one day, and it was such a relief, you know. I remember feeling so relieved whenever it happened, like, oh, thank God he's talking to me again. It was like a weight off my mind, you know, having tiptoed around on eggshells for weeks or however long at a time. Obviously, you don't want to, especially when you're a child, you know, you don't know how to navigate that, that situation. So I was hardly going to go, by the way, what was it that you weren't speaking to me about, you know? I was just so damn relieved that he's finally, yes, you know, my dad's talking to me again. And it would just be back to normal. But it was always on his timeline, you know. was not as though I could go up and start speaking to him. It was always on his timeline. So it was one of those situations where the issues never got resolved because I never knew what it was that I'd done and he never told me. So I kind of got an inkling now of what was happening, in that house. And, recording devices in that house picking up things, and I'll maybe go into that another time. I think this kind of runs quite deep and I don't want to muddle my words as it is, so I don't want to kind of speak on something before I'm kind of ready to, But yeah, I adored him for all his faults. I did. He was the only parent that showed me any kind of, He was the only one that actually seemed to like me at times, although he was very difficult as well, and he wasn't there a lot of time. He was, he worked, he was at work a lot. He was the only provider. Like I said before, my mum had multiple sclerosis. She was diagnosed with that when I was, I think, about 8 or 9, and she went rapidly downhill. She was in a wheelchair by the time I was probably 11, 12, something like that. She died when I was 22. But yeah, it doesn't, a lot of people, well, I don't really care, but a lot of people think, to be honest, I was going to say my family, would they love I'm sure they love amongst themselves to spin the narrative that I'm the devil incarnate, A lot of decisions that I've made have been judged harshly by them. One in particular was joining the army, and when I signed up to join the army, shortly after it, my mum had an operation, and when I got called up to go away and do basic training, she was in a coma. So, not at the time, but later on, that kind of got held against me as a reason why I was so hated. What an absolute disgrace you are, leaving while your mum's on the verge of dying. She died 5 years later, but she didn't die at that time. But it got kind of brought up and used. These people like to drag things from the past and use them as an excuse for their hatred towards you. But the reality is that the hatred was always there. It was always there, and it was just a case of them being able to find excuses to target the hatred towards you. It's the same as the gang stalkers. It's very much the same thing. They'll invade every part of your life, and then any time that they see you doing anything wrong, it's jumped upon. The opportunity they must be rubbing their hands with glee any time that happens. Look, now we have a narrative as a cause of the reason that we are doing this to this person, but it's not reality. The reality is that the stalking, the invasion of every part of your life came first. The excuses that they manufacture and the reasons, they only come later on. They're just a happy little coincidence for these people. They're just like, yes, I've got something now. So any mistakes that I made when I was a child, I was 17 when I joined the army, and like I said, I didn't have a close relationship with her, so I don't know, I suppose like any teenager, that kind of selfishness, and I don't even know if it was selfishness. I don't think I was a particularly selfish person, but it was just a kind of not knowing, a not knowing the right thing to do, and not like anyone took me aside and said, maybe you shouldn't be going and joining. Maybe you should contact them and kind of delay it, or nobody did that for me. No one did that. I suppose I didn't really realise the seriousness of the situation at the time, how serious, how seriously ill she was at the time. I don't think I realised, but I mean, it's probably a certain amount of selfishness with any kind of 16, 17-year-old. But anyway, yeah, it got kind of thrown back in my face later on that was the reason. That was the reason. Along with, I think there was about 20 reasons. They loved to let me know them as well. It never came from the mouth of my dad, funnily enough. It was usually his sister, my aunt. You can get those cups, can't you, where the A looks like a C and it spells out aunt. Well, Yeah, that's exactly what mine is. She, she should be the proud owner of one of those cups, because it's exactly what she is. But yeah, I can remember her later on saying, I went to visit her and she said, I think my mum was still alive at that time, so it was probably about 21, and she said that my dad had talked about her son, my cousin, had a child by then, and she'd said something about, grandchildren and about me, and she said, oh, and then your dad went, I don't have a daughter, and but she couldn't wait to tell me this. There was no need for her to tell me this. It didn't affect anything in any way. It wasn't, what's it going to do? I wasn't speaking to him at that time. I hadn't spoken to him for a couple of years at that point. He'd kind of cut me off, so it was just to get some kind of sadistic pleasure like these people do. Like I said, to kind of rub it in, rub it in that you're hated. She definitely wanted me to know at all times. She definitely passed on, vile things that he supposedly says, whether he did or not. I find it quite hard to believe that he did, but, my mother probably said those things. But, yeah, it's like that. You wouldn't tell someone something like that unless your goal was to hurt them. And that was definitely what she wanted to do, what she's always wanted to do. That's why she's played a big part in the targeting as well. Her and two of her sons, the oldest and the youngest, they've played a part in my targeting, along with my brother. But like I said, I'll get into all that another time. I'll be interested to watch this back to see if the zooming in and out happens again. That was quite funny. It was enough to give you epilepsy, wasn't it? Yeah, goddamn headache. Talking of headaches, that's what I was actually talking about originally. Yeah, so it feels like, like I said, my mum didn't hide her hate for me when I was a child. And I'd come out of the bath or the shower and she'd be drying my hair with a hairdryer. This was when I was still quite young, I think by the time, probably when she was diagnosed with MS, she just gave up even pretending to care about my appearance in any kind of way. So it was probably before the age of 8, and she would hold the hairdryer on the hot setting at one point on my scalp, Just, I've dried children's hair before with hairdryers, and I know enough that I wouldn't do that. I would know enough that it would be painful, but that's exactly what she wanted. That's what people with certain personality disorders do. They love to hurt, and she would do it, and I would be gritting my teeth as a kid, thinking I'm not going to say anything. I'd be squirming, and the heat in my head would be intense, and she would hold it right on the one spot. And eventually it would just become too much, and I would say, ow, and then she would shout at me or shake me and say, fuck's sake, or whatever it was that she said. Can't really remember. Probably best that I don't. But yeah, that's what the heat that these do feels exactly like. Is a hairdryer being held against a certain point in your head continuously. It's madness, and it's been constant for the past couple of weeks, so it gets to you, it gets to you. It doesn't feel great. Which is the goal, isn't it? What is the goal? Is the goal to get me to leave where I am? I don't know. I'm unsure of what the goal is. I know that a couple of weeks ago, prior to this starting happening constantly, it's happened before. But it's been constant now for the past 2 weeks, just constant. But the weekend before it started, there was an outage on the Wi-Fi in the place where I live, so I don't know if that's connected in any way. Also that a couple of weeks ago, I have a house in Scotland that I was cuckooed out of my house. You can look up what cuckooing is. And of course I went through the process of going to the police, but they were very much involved with what was happening, these criminals that took part in this. And I'm going to have to, I'll make a part two